I went to, it's got to be 3 or 4 years ago now. I went to a consultation in the Antrim area hospital near Belfast about sort of the use of funding, the lack of staff, the lack of nurses. And I tried to make this point to the people who were doing the consultation, because they said, we're constantly having to bolster our staff numbers with agency nurses because there's not enough nurses. And I was like, hang on. So you're saying that you have enough nurses from the agency to fill the staff numbers. Does that not suggest that it's not a lack of nurses? It's a lack of either pay, respect, flexibility, for whatever reason that the nurses are choosing to not work for the NHS directly and going to the agency? Like, surely that suggests that there is enough nurses, that you just don't have them on the books yourselves. And the people who were doing the consultation were like, yes, but there's not enough nurses, so we have to go to the agency. It seems to be this like loop where we don't want to confront the fact that we're not treating the staff in a way that makes them want to work for the NHS, and yet at the same time we're complaining that they don't want to work for the NHS. Like, is that a fair assessment of what's going on?
Yeah, it kind of is like that. I mean, you do get some places where the nurses who are working on a ward are also the same agency nurses, and they kind of top up their normal earnings with working loads of extra hours. And when you ask them about it, quite a lot of nurses and doctors wouldn't really choose to do that. They're working an extra 20 hours a week or something because the staff are needed, and so they do all the overtime. But it's still costly. And you're right, there's a lot of people who don't want to commit to a permanent job because they don't feel that they're valued, and they maybe earn a tiny bit more if they do these agency hours. I mean, it's quite stressful doing agency work as well, because you kind of come into a situation where you maybe don't know your colleagues so well, and you don't know the patients, and you just come in for a single shift or something. And so it's a stressful environment to work in often. It's different. But no, I think you're completely right. And and it's getting worse and worse. Certainly in medicine, we're struggling to get doctors into specialty training, because when you come out of medical school, you do a couple of years working in various different specialties to find out what you want to specialise in. And then traditionally, about 75 or 80% of those people would then go onto a training programme and eventually come out the other end as a consultant or a GP. But increasingly, people don't want to do that. They'd much prefer to locum and move around the country a bit, and maybe even move abroad, because doing one of those training programs is really, really stressful, and you have to work loads of hours per week, and there's all these exams and stuff. And we're just finding that people coming up through the system just don't feel very supported in their jobs at the moment, and so they just don't want to commit to things. And that's really bad for the NHS in the long term, because we just won't end up with the consultants and GPs that we need.
Why do you think it is that people don't feel supported? Like, you use that term specifically.
Yeah, it's a mixture of reasons. It's really stressful working in the NHS, and because we're missing about 100,000 staff, you often turn up to work and you maybe don't have as many colleagues around you as you should do. So there's often what we call rota gaps. So let's say there was supposed to be 3 doctors covering a team at night, there'll be 2 or sometimes even 1. And all of those things mean that you're making decisions in a more stressful way, with more kind of time pressure on you, and you don't really have anyone else to check things over with you. So there's that kind of thing that feels really, really stressful. And also, because everyone's feeling stressed, there's less time in the system to kind of sit down with senior colleagues and get advice or support or learn stuff. And so people are kind of going through these training pathways with probably a bit less kind of advice or direction from seniors than they used to. And that can feel really stressful as a doctor. I mean, certainly for all healthcare colleagues, I think, but I can only speak from medics, really. If you did something that harmed a patient by mistake, that's your responsibility. And yet, if there's less and less staff around, then you're more and more likely to make a mistake, because you're having to take on more and more responsibility. So it's this sort of spiral of stress that gets created for people. And it means that people just don't want to fully engage in it. They'd prefer to kind of have a bit of their life and then work a couple of shifts a week. So it's not good.
No. So why, in your opinion, at least anyway, are we like not doing anything about this? I mean, it seems like we should probably be like, hopefully, instead of stressing our staff that we have, and bringing in, I mean, like one of the big debates during Brexit was that like we were bringing in too many immigrants into Britain, or we were allowing in too many. And yet a lot of the immigration is based on like our need, especially in the NHS, for nurses and doctors. My mum had just mentioned she's got a colleague from India who's in her 60s, who's come over here on like a 3-year visa, which, like, fair play to her for coming over to like staff and work and leave her her home country for 3 years, or maybe longer, depending on if she likes it or not. But that seems crazy, when we could like be training people in this, we could be training people in Britain to do it. And why are we not, essentially, in your mind?
I think it's short-term political decision-making that causes all of this. And you're absolutely right. Over a quarter of the medical workforce now are doctors on visas, and they've come over from lots of different countries, but primarily places like Pakistan and some countries in Africa, India, Malaysia. And a lot of these doctors and also nurses are coming from healthcare systems where actually there's poor health provision, and we're going over and actively recruiting staff from countries that can probably ill afford to lose their own healthcare workers, bringing them over to England or other parts of the UK, and actually treating these members of staff really badly. They have to pay really high visa fees and lots of other associated fees as well. They're often not given an awful lot of support in getting used to the UK healthcare system. They're more likely to be referred to the GMC, which is a whole other kind of conversation. And meanwhile, like you say, we're not really supporting people to get involved in training within the UK. I mean, they took away the student nurse bursaries a few years ago, which is a huge thing. And I know that in recent months, actually, lots of people have been applying to do nursing at university.
Oh, really? That's really... Yeah. Oh, that's okay. That's quite
It's
nice.
really surprising. Yeah. I was so surprised. Cynically, I think probably it's because a lot of people have lost jobs during the pandemic and probably are thinking, this will be a job for life for me. This will be something, that's skilled. And that's true, but I do think that nurses in particular really need their bursaries provided, because you'll know this from your mum. When nurses are at nursing school, it's not like a normal uni course where they're just going in for lectures. They go and do shifts on the wards, and they're working really hard. They can't take on another job in their spare time to fund their training or whatever. So if you don't have a bursary, a lot of people can't afford to go and study nursing.
Yeah, that's a real problem. I know from a couple of friends of mine were just like furious when the bursary got removed. They couldn't believe it, and the amount they work, and they'd be telling me they'd be on like full-time shifts, and then have to like go home and like write essays. And I was like, what on earth is wrong with? And they weren't even getting paid barely at all for the shifts they were doing. And it seems like, it feels like sometimes that we're just like deliberately making it awful to try and learn to be a nurse, when anytime anytime anyone from like that older generation speaks about their training to me, they always speak about it as this really fun, positive time where they learn a lot. They got to like, learn these new skills. They got to like help people, and they really enjoyed their work. And one of the bonuses of it was they were getting paid to do that work while they were training. And it seems like we've just like gone the complete opposite tact now.
Yeah, that's how it feels like for me as well. It's really sad. And also I think people who are training during COVID as well have had a really awful time. Some of the nurses have been expected to really step up, and meanwhile not being paid. It's like unbelievable, really.
And then they're talking about the pay rise now. So they've penciled in like 1%, which feels like an insult. It's like these people have really like worked hard on an overstretched service for the best part of a year, and they're getting basically no thanks except some claps. How does it feel as like someone who's working in or with and in the health service? Do you actually feel like the government appreciates what you guys have been doing?
Well, I've not been working frontline, but for the people that I represent, it's awful, really. I mean, doctors aren't as badly paid as nurses, obviously. And so I think the way a lot of doctors are thinking about it is they've taken a massive real terms pay cut over the last few years, which has affected them individually, but they're much more angry on the behalf of nurses and other allied healthcare workers, because nurses sort of someone who's on what's called a top band 5 level, which is a kind of senior nurse, but it's not like a matron. They've taken a 20% real terms pay cut since 2010. And that's a highly skilled individual, and they're not paid very much anyway. They weren't paid very much in 2010. And some of the stories that we've heard from allied health professionals, like other members of staff within the hospital, ICU nurses and others, it's been really horrifying. I mean, people having to go to food banks and not being able to make ends meet. And meanwhile, they're going to work and enduring this incredibly stressful experience over, like you say, like a whole year. It's such an insult to all of their efforts during COVID, I think.
Do you think the government will move on this? Have you seen any suggestion that they might like bump the pay increase or like match Scotland? Like I've heard people hopeful here in Northern Ireland, at least, that the RSR like local assembly will match the Scottish 4% pay rise. Have you heard anything about England?
There's kind of rumours going around, and none of them have been confirmed. I think what we suspect is that they underplayed it by saying that they were going to give 1%, always knowing that they were actually going to go for 2% or something like that. But I doubt they would willingly go to 4%. But we'll see what happens, because as you've probably seen, the RCN and other nurses groups have come out saying they're going to strike. And if they followed through with that, that would put an awful lot of pressure on the government. And so I think the next few weeks will be quite telling how they start responding. I mean, doctors, we're backing the nurses, basically. We're going to try and support everything they're doing. And if they choose to strike, I would be really supportive of that. I think a lot of our colleagues would be as well. Because I just don't think we're going to have an NHS to speak of in the future if we just continue to treat nurses and other colleagues like this.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, follow me on Twitter, or sign up to our mailing list. Thanks a lot to our sponsor, ExpressVPN, the #1 most trusted VPN. Get lightning fast connectivity with servers in 160 locations across 94 countries. Keep your browsing privacy safe with ExpressVPN and get a 35% discount on 12 months of ExpressVPN when you follow the link in the description below. Don't forget, my book is now out and available to order on Amazon and on bookshop.org. That's Brexit, the Establishment Civil War. And most importantly, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.